This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, so we're going to get us started here. Welcome, everybody. This is the February 28th, 2022 meeting of the East Hampton Energy Advisory Committee. Jamie Paquette, the chair, joined by a couple of our members, as well as Councilor Denham, Jamie Webb from the Planning Department, Patrick Roche from Good Energy. We're going to get into things. We're going to do a quick review and approval of the minutes. Scott did send out the minutes after the meeting last time. If anybody had a chance to look those over. Ask for a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes for the prior meeting on January. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, 24th. All right. Connie Dawson, can I ask you to second that?
I'm not a voting member. I don't think I can do that.
Well, that's a good question. All right, well, we'll talk about that in a second. But assuming no opposition, I'm going to say the minutes are approved. The last meeting. So right now is our opportunity for any members of the public who are here who'd like to speak. Bring up now before we get into the rest of it. All right. Yeah, so one of the things that we want to address here is the member update of the committee. And Connie Dawson, I know you had some questions about that. I'll just tell you from what I know. You know, there are, I think, in the official listings, there's 5 spots on the committee, and then 2 potentially, I don't know if they're alternate or associate members.
Yeah, associate. It's not alternate.
Right. So, going back to previously, our previous chair briefly was Misty Altizer, and she's still listed on the committee, although she has not been a part of the committee for some time. We've reached out and not had any luck. So I brought it up with the city clerk, who helps manage those things, and she and Lindsay Mailer from the mayor's office were talking to me a little bit about it. And there basically is a mechanism to have people removed from committee for non-participation. And it involves, sending official documentation, sending official communication saying, hey, you haven't shown up for anything. Are you still interested? Yes or no? And if it gives them one last chance to sort of say yes or no. And if they don't respond or they reply that they'd like to be off, then they're removed. So, so Misty being sort of the 5th member besides, prior me and John and Maren and Scott, basically kind of assuming her spot is vacant at this point, and Connie Dawson, you would be able to take that spot.
Why are there associate members? What's the thought behind that?
That's a good question.
So weird.
Jamie Webb.
Yeah, so a lot of boards and committees have associate members as a way to have a mechanism to still have a full full contingent of board members at a meeting if a member can't make it. So if, let's say, there are 5 members and 2 associates, and 3 members come to the meeting and 1 associate, you would still have like a supermajority. You still have a quorum. The associate would then be able to participate as a full member for that meeting. But if all 5 full members were there and the 2 associates, then the 2 associates would just sort of hang back and they could participate in conversations and discussions, but then they wouldn't be, their votes wouldn't be counted, or they would be asked not to participate in the vote. So that way the vote is still out of 5 members.
That's an interesting reason. It certainly is true that many committees do not have associate members, and some of them have alternates, which I also don't understand. But I can tell you, I am not interested in being on a committee where I'm not a full participant, and I would imagine most people would feel that way. So I would suggest that we try to change it. That's my personal opinion, and for what it's worth.
Okay, yeah, is that from the charter, Jamie Webb? Or?
Well, so I know the planning board and the zoning board are the only boards that I knew of that actually had associate members as part of their charter. I don't know, I haven't looked at the Energy commission's charter. So I don't know what the, if it is 5 members and 2 associate members, then that is, the associates are there to like make sure that they're full members. They just don't always get to vote.
So they're not full of members. And also, many committees do not have associate members. That's what seems so
Exactly.
odd to me.
Right,
That some do and some don't.
right. And so,
we don't have to discuss it anymore. I understand what's going on. I think it's a bad idea to have
Typically-
some committees with associate members and some committees that don't have associate members. I just think it's a bad idea.
typically, where I've seen it for the zoning board and the planning board, these are licensing boards that need to have full membership in order to actively conduct the business of the city. I had not seen it in any of our advisory boards or committees, because typically advisory boards don't have a chart. They don't have any obligation to actually do anything, formal, other than vote on their meeting, vote on their minutes, or vote on a motion that like, we support this thing, or, for an advisory commission, there may not be much difference between a full member and a associate member, other than just like being able to vote on the minutes or being able to be the chair of the commission.
Okay, well, we can move on. I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring it up, and
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it was something that I needed to, I was interested to know too. So Jamie Webb, thank you for that. And Connie, I think, for all intents and purposes going forward, we haven't had 5 people at a meeting in a long time. So, and I'd like to elevate you to the full position on the board, assuming that seat is going to be, if not already vacant.
I mean, just for your information, I have had a couple of, a conversation with Evan LeBeau. Do you know Evan? He's
I've heard the name.
who's interested in joining the committee. I don't know how interested he would be in just being an associate member, however. So, I mean, I can't imagine why anyone else would really be really enthusiastic about joining the committee if they're only going to be associate members. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, to Jamie Webb's point,
I would say that it's just to work with other people. I mean, it's to work with people on relevant projects, whether, and the voting doesn't seem to be too consequential most of the time, or controversial.
okay, let's trade. Why don't you
working on-
become the associate member?
We're
I
working
would
on
say,
you.
I mean, having a seat,
Let's drop it. That was just like a nasty comment. Let's drop it. Let's move on.
The more people we have participating, the better. That's certainly my thing. And what we're trying to do, we act in an advisory capacity. We're not ruling on any zoning or anything that
I understand.
the ongoing repercussions in that sense. So glad that we have that, a little bit cleared up. We will certainly try to get that settled a little bit more. If Evan wants to talk, I'm happy to talk to him offline about that. And Jamie Webb, you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, if there is a desire on the part of this commission to change the number of board members or the positions or anything like that, that's a discussion that should be had with the mayor and the city council. It would require a change of the charter. Sometimes it requires just a mayoral's, what's it called? Some of these things can just done by the mayor administratively, and some have to go through the council. It does depend board to board and how they're organized.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read the defining documents for this committee even, which I probably should, as chair, know what they say. So I'll have to look at that and see. I never really gave it too much thought prior, but okay. So we certainly have enough members here at the moment to move forward with this meeting, and we will work on addressing that. As far as the next item on the agenda, some update on municipal aggregation. So in our discussions to this point, there's definitely been some strong interest from the committee to move this forward at the city level. Last time we were able to have Councilor Denham join us and sort of take the lead on helping to push this. Councilor Zaret and Keek have been involved in some discussions around that in terms of getting a resolution drafted. Councilor Zaret did create a draft resolution, which I shared with the committee for everyone to look through. And the next steps of that are going to be for us to review discuss real quick, anything that we see or, in there that could be an issue. And then move it forward with the city council to actually, get it probably to the full committee or to the full council, then to committee and back to the council for approval. Since he's joined us here, Patrick Roche from Good Energy, consultant that works with municipalities. Many of you have not had a chance to interact with him or Daria, his counter, or his colleague, right word is. Yeah, colleague, thank you. They've been working with us over the past year or so, helping us, guide through the process, sort of what we need to do, how it's worked elsewhere, and what it looks like once it's implemented. So I asked them to come today to be able to answer some questions. I know I talked a little bit with some of the new folks about how this works, but Patrick certainly has more information, more expertise in these matters. So Patrick, I don't know if there's anything you want to lead in with, or just be available for some questions.
Yeah, I think you captured it right. I wanted to just be here today in case questions came up, or particularly as you're talking about going in front of the city council. One of the ways we can help too, I think, is if there are pieces of data that you might find interesting about what's going on with aggregation statewide, or or data about how some programs have performed, things that maybe would help your presentation. We'd be happy to sort of put that together, or if you do develop a slide deck, we'd be happy to take a look at it in case there's any feedback. So yeah, I think mostly here to listen. And actually, Jamie, I should have asked you for a copy of the resolution ahead of time. But if you could just fire it over, I could just take a look while you guys are talking.
I think so. Yeah, I'll try to get it to you here while we're discussing. But I guess John or Connie Dawson, as new members, is there anything that you'd like to learn? I think I had forwarded you some of the materials that they had given us previously and walked us through.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering about how complicated the process was to file and have it reviewed. It sounded like there's a long waiting list to review proposals. And it could be some months, many months, maybe longer to get a response from, is it DOER, or is this Department of Public Utilities? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that's just one thing, as the process, once a decision has been made by the town and the proper procedures followed by the town, what happens then?
Yeah, Patrick, I know you'd said before that I know it's kind of a backlog. Is there any update on that process?
So yeah, I think last time we talked was probably just before the new year, I think, and December 31st, DPU made sure they could say that they did more this year. So they approved 6 of our programs, which was nice, and. Yeah, they have an end of year penchant, but so they've cleared the backlog a little bit, or they've made some progress on it. But and I think in some of you may have seen, there's been some renewed pressure in the media. The Boston Globe has had a number of articles really skewering the DPU for issues related to solar efficiency. And just with the urgency of the climate crisis, they're holding up many things. So I think we're encouraged that they are starting to feel some more of this pressure. And there is a shorter backlog, I guess, right now than there has been in the past, since, I think most of the first mover communities have moved. But yes, it is still, you're probably looking at least a year at DPU. And they just don't have a statutory obligation to rule at any particular time.
Well, good news that they actually approved some new ones, because that seemed to be the thing, is like everything was just kind of stuck and nobody knew it was going to become unstuck. So that's positive. And a year is better than sort of 2 or more years that we were maybe looking at.
Yeah, and I think of these programs as there are programs that can evolve over time. And so I think it's this kind of thing where the sooner you get the infrastructure in place and the approval, whenever that happens to be, then you are ready to go and start having an impact. But yeah, sort of the sooner the better you start, I guess, is the key there.
And how much of the program is fully, sort of formed, or I guess by the time it goes to DPU, right? We've already like worked out pretty much all the shape of how it's going to look at that point, or does that happen after?
Yeah, largely the way we think of it is the plan is the overall structure and the rules in which you'll operate, but then there are choices that the community can make within that framework without having to go back to DPU or change the plan. So in that, I think the most important thing there is it will outline, for example, you'll probably figure out in the plan, it'll say whether your default product, the one that people are enrolled in automatically, whether that will have more renewable energy than the state requires or not, and which optional products you'll have as well. But exactly what percentage you'll have, that doesn't have to be spelled out, because we can sort of dial that in closer to when you're actually going to bid, and then it can also be the kind of thing that increases over time at the community's discretion.
Okay.
Yeah. And same with the education outreach is such a huge part of this. So the plan, when we file it with DPU, will have a broad framework of all the different sort of types of outreach we'll do in our initial thoughts about who we'll be working with, how we'll do that. But again, once we're approved and we have a launch date, then we'll really be getting into the finer details and refining that kind of thing. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next steps, as we've outlined, are to get the council resolution, get that in front of them. And Patrick, I did forward that draft to you just a minute ago. Get that through the council process, and then once that's approved, then we're basically free to start the process of getting it filed with DPU at that point. Is that right? Or I think there is maybe DOER is involved in the interim.
Yeah. There's a couple steps in there. What we would do, or what you would do is develop a draft plan. And the nice thing is we're largely working with some pretty set language from DPU at this point. And there's we need to put it out for public review for a period of time, and then we can send it on to the Department of Energy Resources first, as you mentioned. And then usually after their consultation, they usually don't have many changes or recommendations, but if there's any changes that public review suggests or the DOER suggests, we kind of put that into a sort of a final plan. And the council, sort of best practice is the council would sort of vote to submit that to DPU. So yeah, it doesn't have to take a ton of time to get to that point. Public review is a minimum of 2 weeks. But there is some interim between passing it and then getting that plan together. Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does your firm, Patrick, have work with the PR around these things to generate more support from the community for it and understanding, or are you just dealing with the contract and the bids and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, great question. So we aim to kind of provide the full suite of services that are needed. So education and outreach and marketing is a key part of that. So for the public review period, often what it might look like from our side is we'll develop a website. It can be linked from of course, the municipality's website that hosts a copy of the plan, has a online form, has some explainer documents, so people can get educated about the plan. And then we'd also help develop, the graphics, say, for if you want to do some social media posting or a flyer, things like that to get. So, and that's just at the stage of plan development. When it comes to launching, then also we really take the lead in creating all those materials that you would need to get the word out.
Go ahead, sorry, I have
just
more.
was-
questions,
did you
but you're
say the
ready. Go ahead.
Did you say it also has to go by the DOER? Is that what you said, or I wasn't sure what you had said?
Yeah.
So when does that,
Yeah,
they also comment on it before it actually goes to the officially goes to the DPU? Is that what happens? I didn't understand that part.
Yeah, the law says that DOER you have to consult with DOER before you submit it to DPU. And so what that means is there's a meeting held with DOER, and then they issue you a consultation letter, which may have some recommendations in it.
I see. Okay, thanks.
How is Good Energy paid exactly? I know you don't have an upfront fee. It somehow comes out of the revenue stream or something like that. How does that work?
Yep. Yeah, so we're basically working at risk until you sign an electricity contract with the supplier. And if you don't sign, that's okay. We just walk. There's no payment. And when you do sign, we have a flat fee, no matter who you sign with or for how long you sign with, per kilowatt hour. That just goes into the rate. So it just gets recovered as we get paid as people pay their bills.
So you're the broker. Is that right? You're the
Yeah,
broker?
right. We would say consultant and brokering is one of the key things we do, but
Okay.
the other services being those education and outreach and the
No, no,
marketing.
of course, I
and-
just meant that you don't hire, we don't hire a broker. You guys provide the brokering. That's one of the things that you do as the package.
Yes.
Right, okay, I
You got it.
understand. Yeah.
Patrick, what's the typical range of the flat fee per kilowatt hour that you've had on recent contracts? Is that something you can talk about?
Sure. Yeah. We have the same fee for every municipality, which is it's a $1 per megawatt hour. So that is $0.001 per kilowatt hour, right? So if the power is, say, 10 cents, 10.1 would be 10.1 with our fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's yep. So we just try to keep it the same across everybody. So everybody has access to all the same services from us.
That's 100th, right? Am I looking at my decimals right? Or a 100th of the value of the
1,000th of a
1%, 1%, or is that a 1/10 of 1%?
Jamie's got it. It's a, yeah.
at the 1%.
1/10. Okay, that sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nominal. I mean, it's not, again, other than anyone who's like paying super close attention to their bill. And it's not even, it wouldn't even be itemized separately on the bill, right, Patrick? It's just gonna baked in.
Right. It's not itemized separately, but when you look on the website or on the forums, we will disclose that there's a fee in there, but it's not like broken out on the bill separately or anything.
So I have a lot of questions about this because this is the first time I've been introduced to it. So when a customer gets the bill after we have this up and running and they're participating, are they still getting a bill from Eversource that just is that the electricity is being provided by the community aggregation, or is it now completely separate from Eversource in terms of billing?
And Jamie, I'm happy to answer these, but jump in if at all, if you want.
Yeah,
So-
I'd rather you get it right.
Sure. No, I think he knows all this stuff. But so yeah, for the bill, the nice thing is that you'll still get one bill from Eversource, and it's got the supply. It has a supply portion and the distribution portion, and so the supply portion is what will change, and it would say something like, East Hampton Electricity, East Hampton Aggregation, something like that. So the nice thing is most customers, there's no sort of like a frictionless change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm asking that question is that, I try not to look at my bill because it irritates me so much when I look at it, because there are all these like weird charges that have no meaning for me, but that will continue. And that's not going to change,
That's-
correct?
That's an Eversource issue.
Yeah, no, I know. I just wanted to understand exactly what we're doing here.
Right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this is, we're basically becoming the supplier, like, right, we're buying the
Right.
energy and supplying it, and
And
Eversource.
which some people are doing now. They're choosing to have a separate supplier.
That
Right.
choice. Everyone has that choice. This is, everyone gets opted into this, but they still have the opt out if they want to go and do that.
Right.
It does not change their ability to opt, pick a different supplier.
Right.
It just means that
Okay.
we're becoming a supplier and we want to put more renewables in the mix. I think that's generally what we're wanting to do. Trying to make sure that we have options for people that are going to be at different levels, different price points, including likely one that's going to be like, the state minimum that's not going to change their cost. The one, like the default, as Patrick said before, will be one that we choose. It'll probably have a higher percentage of renewables in the mix, and it'll be a little bit more expensive as a result. But we'll see what those numbers are. We'll have to go out to bid, and the market could look very different than what it does right now at the time that we do that.
So, is that okay if I keep asking questions? Another question I have that I know you actually answered at some other meeting, but I'm just curious about it because I've had conversations with people who are involved with the internet that is going to be produced. That East Hampton's going to provide internet for the city,
Right.
and there was some discussion about having that, which is also it is a municipal. It's called a municipal electric
Municipal light plant.
utility, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah.
And there was
no.
some talk about having that utility provide electricity, which would require purchasing it. But I think the idea was that it would actually cut out Eversource. Eversource would no longer be involved in electricity for the city, for the people who live in the city, if they chose to opt into it.
Right.
But you guys, in doing your research, determined that it was just not a great idea. But I just would like some more information about why that isn't an option that would make sense.
Right. I can, and Patrick, I think you're the one who told us this, or it came from you guys, but basically, like, to do that, to use the municipal light plant to that effect, we would have to buy all the infrastructure from Eversource. Basically, we would have to own all the wires and like all the distribution network and everything else. And basically, Eversource has no requirement to let us do that, or to make it easy for us to do that. And there's not really any reason for us.
Tom told me that he thought it might be possible to pay them a fee for the use but have them still own it. I don't know if that's an option, but I just.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, like, what do we gain from that, I suppose, is the question. And Jamie Webb, feel free.
Well, we separate ourselves from Eversource, I guess, is what we gain.
No, not if you're paying them a fee to manage it.
And I think that another point that came up was just the administrative costs. So with that, to use the municipal light plant, we would then have to increase the number of employees, and it would be creating a new department where, it would be tax implications and things like that, that this is all financed by the ratepayers through the small surcharge. But, there's.
Isn't the utility that's being set up for the internet, won't that also require a new department and employees, or employ one employee in order to have that function?
I can't speak to that, but I would assume so. But this is, that's a new, that's a new program, and it is a possibility, obviously, to do it through the municipal light plant. I think there's also just, looking at how easy it is to do it, and working with a company that specializes in this type of work. It's more of a turnkey type of situation, where if we try to reinvent the wheel and create a new utility, we might be still discussing it, 10 years from now.
Right. I mean, I certainly understand the argument, and I think that I would say, let's go for what we can, let's do it now, because this we could do, well, except for the DPU saying you can do it in a year, but within the confines of what the DPU is willing to let us do. I agree that we should just go for it. I was just trying to understand, there was a lot of discussion about, generating electricity, trying to hook up with Holyoke, and a lot of discussion about different things that we might do that would really be providing electricity separate from Eversource. So I just was trying to follow through on that and understand why it's been dropped. That's
Yeah, I'd say, it's an order of magnitude or more, like more difficult, number one, as to Jamie Webb's point. The other thing is that the municipal light plant for broadband is an opt-in thing, right? And this is everyone's automatically opted in. That everyone has to choose, oh, my internet provider is going to be whatever. In this case, like, anyone who right off the bat is going to be dumped into this program from day one. So it's a little bit different as far as like, how much you have to manage it from the get-go also, I would
And
say.
I suppose actually there's no reason why, if down the road some person with a lot of energy and talent decided that they wanted to set up something that was a separate electric utility, those two things actually could exist together. You could decide to continue to get your electricity through Eversource but having it be through this aggregation or not, and it doesn't necessarily preclude following through on that if there's ever anyone who wanted to do that. So, okay,
Yeah.
I know a couple people are going to ask me about this. That's really why I'm asking, because I know that there's some people who, how it is, always want to know about this stuff. So I feel like I understand.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I have something to say about it.
We want to have that information, and Eversource is nobody's favorite. Nobody wants to think like that they're going to be in their pocket forever. But there are good things, I guess, and efficiencies that come from them sort of running the show on that level.
Right.
But
Right.
Patrick, did you have
Thank
something?
Thank you.
Jamie, is there a need? Sorry. Is
Patrick-
there a need for some write-up by the EAC in terms of commentary or recommendations on the resolution, or not?
I think I thought we would have a quick discussion about the way it is presented right now is written. Patrick, I'm going to let Patrick jump back in for a second. I don't know if your comment was about that, Patrick, or about something else.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to Connie's point, when people do ask you, I think one of the ways I always explain the MLP thing, the municipal light plant, is 100 years ago, if you wanted to choose where your power came from, choose your sources of renewable energy and set your price, you had to become a light plant. You had to buy all the infrastructure to do it. But now that we have this legislation, you can do that without having to get the burden of buying all the equipment and dealing with that. So,
Oh yeah, it's here. It's all set up. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jamie Webb, you had something else to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing to this, is that I have a friend who lives in Holyoke who cannot access any of the Mass Saves programs because Holyoke runs their own
Very
utility.
good point.
And if we were to stay with, stay with this proposal, I believe we would still have access, or residents would still have access to Mass Saves. But if we were to go down to a municipal light plant, we would likely lose that ability. And they provide, and Mass Saves provides a lot of value to residents.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a really good point as well. These are all good talking points for us to have kind of at the ready for people. And John, I mean to get away from your question, but yeah, I think at this point, if there's no other major questions, we'll just sort of look through the resolution here real quick. Patrick, if you've had a chance to pull that up. Like I said, Councilor Zare put this together. There maybe were one or two, or a few little typos or things here and there. But basically, he cites Massachusetts general law and the aggregation clauses therein. Community choice aggregation allows private residents and businesses to access the benefits of electricity deregulation. obtain electricity rates that would otherwise not be available to those consumers as individual customers. Whereas municipal aggregation allows a municipality to contract for competitive rates. And whereas in doing so, municipalities can offer better rate protection to consumers of energy. And whereas municipal aggregation allows for broader choices of purchasing energy that is derived from renewable sources higher than the Massachusetts Renewable Portfolio Standard. And whereas a municipal aggregation program is entirely voluntary for energy consumers and there is no penalty for individual opt-out. And whereas 164 municipalities in the Commonwealth have approved aggregation programs, Patrick, maybe that number needs to be updated with the new ones that have been approved. Therefore, be it resolved, the East Hampton City Council calls upon the mayor and the appropriate departments to research, develop, and participate in a contract or contracts to aggregate the electricity load of the residents and businesses in the city and for other related services independently or in joint action with other municipalities, and authorize the mayor or their designee to execute all documents necessary to accomplish the same. All right, so Patrick, I know that Councilor Zaret borrowed at least some or all of this language from other resolutions that we found from other municipalities. Is there anything in there that jumps out at you as an issue, problematic, anything?
Just a couple things. One is on the last paragraph, the first line, the East Hampton City Council calls upon the mayor. We have some draft language that uses the word, authorizes the mayor. And I do see it says authorize the mayor in the last sentence there, but I guess unless you had a specific, maybe East Hampton like legislative reason for saying calls upon, authorize might be the best thing because it is sort of an authorizing resolution.
Okay.
So just a suggestion. And then this is kind of minor. Well, it's funny. So the Department of Public Utilities gets really, they get really kind of concerned about communities giving the impression that savings could be guaranteed with aggregation. So in our communications, we're very clear, like we have a track record of savings, but we can't guarantee it. Mm-hmm. So, and they've actually been explicit enough as to say, if you're mentioning price stability, competitive rates, or competitive prices, you need to have a little disclaimer that savings cannot be guaranteed. So I, basically where it says they can contract for competitive rates and maybe offer better rate protection.
But can't they, isn't it true that they can do better rate protection because they can have a longer contract than 6 months?
Yes. So I think
that's what that says, better rate protection on that one. And then does it somewhere else say it's cheaper?
No, it does say the competitive rates and then the offer better rate protection. I think those are and allows for a broader choices of purchasing energy.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so I think I guess what I'd say is we haven't seen any communities at DPU get told that their resolution is inadequate because or invalid because of language like this. But I think my recommendation would be, if you were going to be on sort of the best side of DPU, would be that where you say to contract for competitive rates, you might put a comma and say recognizing that savings cannot be guaranteed. And then in that second one, whereas in doing so, municipalities can offer, instead of better rate protection, we could think about this, but maybe something like can contract for longer fixed prices than utility basic service. If that's what you're really,
that's
meaning there.
In the broader choices of purchasing energy. Is that what you mean, Pat? Is that the one you're talking about?
I was thinking of the better rate protection.
Oh, the rate protection still. Okay. So,
yeah.
Right. So something that just expands on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Better rate.
Where's the one that the first one that you said? I don't see it here. Is it the second paragraph?
Are you talking about what he was talking about the calls upon and like changing that
the rates when you were talking about the actual price? Where is that? about getting a better price. Where is
The
that?
third one. is-
Fourth paragraph.
The fourth
The
one?
third one is where it says allows a municipality to contract for competitive rates.
And then broader choices.
And
higher
better
than-
rate protection and then broader choices. So under rate protection, you're saying we should maybe add some language or change that a little bit to say, or better,
Longer fixed rates,
Yeah.
which is actually what that is. I mean, that is true. That's my understanding is that because you can only, because Eversource only guarantees 6 months is my understanding.
Right, right. Yeah. And, funny enough, DPU has also taken some issue with saying that we guarantee rate stability because there can be things like changes in law that you can't predict when the law changes.
Well, let's
But,
not say
yeah.
it. Let's just take it out.
Yeah.
Do we have to say it at all?
I think the most, I guess this is partly a bit of a sales piece because you want this to describe why you're doing it, I imagine. So the benefits are important. So I wonder I'm just putting this together here. I think what might be best is if we combined the competitive rates and the rate protection possibly, and then that way we could put one, we call it the savings disclaimer, in the same paragraph, and it would sort of cover both of them rather than like repeating it twice. So the idea would be the savings disclaimer is the words recognizing that savings cannot be guaranteed. So it might be something like, whereas a municipal aggregation allows a municipality to contract for competitive rates and municipalities can offer better rate protection to consumers, recognizing that savings can't be guaranteed. I think that might, you put the disclaimer in there, which DPU loves, they're going to want to see. And I think you've kept the spirit of what you're trying to get out of describing the benefits.
Well, and the second paragraph also says, just thinking about this at the end, and obtain electricity rates that would otherwise not be available to those consumers as individual customers. Is that going to be a problem?
I think that's fine. I
Okay,
think that's fine because, yeah, right now there's the private competitive market, there's the utility, and now we're going to add a third option.
okay.
Yeah. It does not say anything about lower electricity rates, just rates that otherwise would not be available.
Oh, okay, good point.
Increasing choice, but not
Yeah.
necessarily guaranteeing lower rates.
Okay.
So, okay, I think that's a good note to combine that third and fourth paragraph there and offer the one disclaimer and update the calls upon in the final paragraph to authorizes to make sure that we're being clear about that.
I have another question about this. I think it's your website that talks about the energy is local. Are you the guy? I have been on so many websites, but typically that is another plus that people talk about with municipal aggregation is that you're not getting your green electricity from, Texas. Well, not Texas, obviously, but is that something that we want to put into this? Or does it matter? I don't
know. I think that's more of like a marketing outreach side of
Okay.
things, PR side. I don't think that's something that would go in the resolution.
Okay,
Because,
Yeah.
again, we don't know exactly, I think, Good Energy does say, hey, here's all the places that we work with to get energy. And we're constantly trying to get more local stuff, in New England and beyond.
yeah.
But just like, we can't guarantee where each electron is coming from, but we can buy from somebody who might be, getting supply from somewhere else because they just can't oversell the supply that they have, right? It's like no one can sell the same electron twice, essentially.
I have another question. I'm sorry I keep asking questions, but right now, if you have a solar system on your house and you don't use all the electricity that you generate, Eversource buys it back from you. Or there's I know that's a simplistic explanation. So what will happen to people in East Hampton who have solar panels, but maybe also want to participate in this for the times that they don't generate enough electricity themselves, will it go to Eversource? Like, how's that going to work? How does that work?
Patrick,
It-
feel free.
Sure, thanks. Yes, it does go back to Eversource, and you'll still get paid the same amount, or the value is the same. And the reason is that the way that compensation is funded is from a fee collected on the distribution side of the bill across all ratepayers. So when you change your supplier, it doesn't affect it.
Oh, I see.
So-
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
But the flip side of that question for me is when you're not generating enough power to cover your needs in the house and you're having to, the meter's going the other way and you're buying from Eversource, are you still able to take advantage of this municipal aggregation?
yeah, that was what I was trying to ask. You just said it better than I did. That's exactly what I
Oh,
was trying
nice.
to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, net
Nice.
metering-
Yeah,
This was my
it's sort of a-
question also. This was my
Yeah.
question
Oh.
also from earlier.
That's good.
Right,
Yeah,
the
it's sort of a
answer is
best of
yes.
both worlds. It's a best of both worlds where you get to consume off the grid the supply that the program has chosen, or that you've chosen in the program. And then when you put your electrons back off onto the grid, you still get paid the same that you were getting paid. So
That's great.
ideally, potentially, if we've gotten you a better price, when you do pull electrons from the grid, you may be paying lower, and when you put them back onto the grid, you're still getting maybe a slightly higher, price and value for them.
Yeah, it doesn't change net metering, but it may actually be another strike against sort of the municipal light plant thing too, where then if you're opting people out of the Eversource things, like all of a sudden, are we responsible then for, for stuff like net metering and for credits and things like that would end up, that may put the burden on us a little bit more to deal with that side of things too. And that could really change things for people with existing solar systems. But Councilor Dedham, I know you said that question. Anything else from your side on the city council that you see here that is worth bringing up? Anything to change or how do you-
I don't think so. Councilor Zara put it together, and I know that Councilor Peak also had some input, and I think that we both all felt that it was good. I mean, I think I just had that kind of question, and then I've appreciated Connie's comments also. Those questions, I think, are some of the things that I've been trying to understand. This is good, all new to me. I'm certainly interested, want to be supportive. But yeah, those were some of the pieces that I just had questions about. But this has been a really helpful conversation for me.
Great. And do you think you're on the ordinance committee, if I recall? No, are you on rules? I forget what.
I'm on rules, and Councilor Zaret is on ordinances.
Okay, and we think that this is going to go through rules potentially from a committee standpoint, or?
That I don't know, but I would think that it would likely go through ordinance, but I'm not sure. But I'm just thinking that way because Councilor Zaret had put this together, and so I would think that would go there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit of an open question where it's going to end up. But I guess from your perspective, we're talking about presenting this at an upcoming city council meeting so that it can be moved to committee. And so, maybe even sometime in the next couple of weeks. And I guess it's up to the council to figure out where they need to put it at that point. So we don't have to know ahead of time necessarily. But we'll just try, cultivating goodwill and interest and support for it beforehand from the whole council as much as possible. So yeah, anything that you would have in terms of input for a process? I mean, if we get this language cleaned up a little bit based on the conversation we've had here, and then come present it at a council meeting, sort of mid March maybe.
Yeah, again, the process of these is a little bit new to me, but I think you would just give it to the council, and then it has to be assigned, and then there'd be opportunity for like public speak, etc. And then you might speak on it at that particular point. But you could also, I think, just give an update potentially that this is happening, and whatnot. And so I think there's a couple of different ways of going about it based on what you felt most comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, and again, yeah, I'm new to the whole, introducing things to council and like where it goes from there process as well. So, but definitely want to keep this moving, given sort of some of the long time horizons that we're looking at. Don't want to sit on anything too long. If we can start to get it moving, and like I said, the mayor has been involved in one or two of these meetings, so she has been supportive, voiced her support for this generally, and I think we've got some counselors on board, so should be able to get it through, hopefully not too much back and forth. Okay, so, and I guess from that standpoint, it's okay for us to sort of continue discussing this offline from the counselors and like getting the language and making sure that everybody's okay with that, and then kind of present from there. Anybody of the committee members that are here now, would have any objections to moving this forward with some of the changes that we discussed and getting it in front of the council from here?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. So yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to have an official vote or resolution from the committee itself. I think we can just, we've been working on this, talking about it. Our questions are mostly settled, and we'd like to get it to the next level, the next phase in the process. So, Patrick, anything else from your perspective for let you jump off?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's great. I would just say, to the extent that, yeah, again, you need data or things. I mean, of course, we are happy to help present, but it seems like you guys get a great committee here, and any information you might need for a presentation or slides, we'd be happy to provide that. Or we've done that a bunch, so happy to support however you need.
Okay.
So that actually was what I was going to ask about. Are we doing a presentation to the city council when this resolution is presented?
I don't know. My assumption right now would be that might just go and do it as sort of like a public speak, like committee update piece to start with, and then see if what sort of questions or things that come up from that, and then if we need to do a presentation for a committee or for the full council after that, then maybe we can prepare to do that, sort of lay the groundwork, see what sort of support there is generally, or questions that come up, and then be prepared to work through those to get the resolution passed.
And my next question is, once the resolution is passed, I know there's going to be this long lag time dealing with the DPU, but when should we start our community outreach?
Right. I would say, yeah, that will come after the resolutions in place, as we're, starting to go through the process with DOER. Like, there is that public review period then that we'll be dealing with. So I think, that's when we would start getting some information.
That could be relatively soon then.
Could be. Yeah, that could be within the next couple of months.
So Patrick, do you have materials that you can give us for that when we get to that point?
Definitely.
Advice about what to do?
Yeah, definitely. And my colleague Daria is more of our marketing person. She would really take the lead, working with you to design those and get your feedback and input, whatnot.
Great.
Councilor Denham, did you have something else you were going to add there?
Oh, I was just going to say, once city council moves it to a committee, I think that's where the meat of this conversation is going to take place, is within that committee, right? And then they're going to come back and share what they voted on or what they discussed within to city council, right? So I think the real important pieces that you want to get across, or presentation, et cetera, I think is going to take place in the committee, right? I think that's where a lot of the heavy conversation happens.
Absolutely. Yep. That seems what I would expect. So good. Well, Patrick, thank you very much for coming and for educating and re-educating us a little bit about this. It's really helpful. It's really helpful to have the experts on hand to really get into the nitty-gritty and cover a lot of topics. So Councilor John, thank you for coming by. And Patrick, thanks so much for spending.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciative.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you. Some new faces, and stay in touch. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Well, that was great. I'm really happy that it has a clear pathway forward and some real momentum here, I think, to get that moving.
Mhm.
So we'll move on to next item on the agenda, which is the solar ordinance working group updates. I have not seen anything from planning about that at this point, but Jamie Webb, you have something to share?
So brief update, Curtis, who had been spearheading this initiative, left city employment. He's now working for Mass DOT. So he's on to newer and different things. I will be taking over sort of the facilitation of or shepherding this through city council. The working group itself has at this point pretty much wrapped up everything. We have drafts of the proposed ordinance and draft of the proposed map. And I'll be meeting with the Agricultural Commission next week to discuss dual use. And we had sent the draft ordinance to the city solicitor to get his feedback on it prior to sending it to city council. And he is recommending that we slow down. There's a current case before the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts that's regarding how municipalities can regulate solar under Mass General Laws 40A, which says you cannot have unreasonable regulation of solar energy. And there hasn't been a lot of case law to date on that, like what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. And the results of that decision, so they're arguing that case sometime in March, and then the decision expected within 3 or 4 months of that being the close of those arguments. So it's unclear if we're going to start the process and send it to planning and the planning board and city council. So that way, when those arguments are made and the decisions released, that it's already in front of those groups, or whether or not we'll hold off, see what the results are, and then try to resubmit. It's questionable in some ways as to whether or not the I feel strongly that our ordinance is not unreasonable, and it doesn't unreasonably regulate. And I think that the Supreme Judicial Court case is, is regarding whether or not you can restrict zoning to certain districts, which we are not doing. But we do create an overlay district that has a special permit process. And that special permit process then looks at each site specifically, which is sort of how the lower courts had ruled, is that you need to look at each site specifically, and you can't just say like this section of the city is off limits because we don't want solar there. So we'll see what happens, but it's slowly moving forward, and we'll provide updates as we continue.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. I'm sorry to hear that Curtis left. I mean, certainly he brought a lot of energy to the proceedings and really helped guide that whole process in a very helpful, great way, inclusive way. I know that unreasonable regulation was a term that I heard him say probably 7,500 times during those meetings. So I'm sure he'll be doing great things with DOT, but it's a loss to the city for sure.
Yeah. And I just want to echo, he really did a great job of getting this ordinance. It's really his work and process to pull together all the different groups and all the different discussions and all the different opinions as to what should actually be included. And I'm just carrying the torch for a little bit. So
Okay. Well, yeah, it was great. It was great to hear all the different voices around it and really have like a, an open discussion that incorporate a lot of different viewpoints and things to think about. I think we all came away with some new things and new ways of looking at stuff and useful in that way, even if, we end up having to hold off because the state's going to sort of supersede what we did. But I definitely, appreciate that. And it sounds like, letting things play out in the courts is probably the right way to go before we spend too much more time pushing things forward on our side. But obviously that's for you all in the planning group to do. Okay. Thanks, Jamie.
Got a question, Jane?
Sure. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. It's Jamie and Jamie, I'm realizing this. Okay.
Yeah, two
Jamie
Connies,
Webb.
two Jamies.
Question for Jamie Webb. Is there such a docket number or some kind of case reference for this discussion, whatever argument that's going to go on in the Supreme Court, Mass Supreme Court for this purpose that somebody could reference and see what cases are being made in both directions on this?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure that there's a docket number. I don't know it.
Okay.
We like I said, we did reach out to the city solicitor, and the information he provided us was that there wasn't much case law to date on it. That the two cases, one said you can't use aesthetics, like aesthetics is not reasonable to deny solar, which there was no surprise there. And the other is this current one that's pending, and they have not had my understanding is they have not had their arguments yet. So there should be a docket number, but I don't think there's anything in it.
Okay.
And I don't actually know I can reach out to the city solicitor and see.
I'll look it up and try to see whatever I can find, and I'll share it if I find something. But
Yeah.
The other question is, are those agricultural commission meetings? I don't know if all the town meeting boards and committees have open attendance, so you could listen in by finding the Zoom the Zoom link on the city website, because I'd be interested in hearing what how they respond to this in their comments.
Yep.
And-
So they will be, their agenda is posted already for their meeting next week. It's next Tuesday, March 8th at 6:30 p.m. And if you go to the city agenda and minutes link on the website, then you'll be able to find the Agricultural Commission.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And yeah, John, if you do find anything on the docket number it's worth sharing, certainly do that, and we can talk a little bit more at the next meeting about that. Cassie, thanks for joining us. Do you have anything to update on any sort of green community grant proposals, reporting stuff?
Yeah, so two things. So for the grant, I think I've already said we got it. We got the grant. Did I tell everyone that yet already?
I don't think we knew that from last season. So.
Sorry about that. Yes, we got the grant too. So that's $15,000 divided going towards electric vehicles. Two specifically, that's at $7,500 going to each vehicle, and that's for the city to acquire 2 new Teslas that will be used by the police force. The first step, now that we've gotten the grant, been awarded the grant, is to fill out the contract and a number of other paperwork elements that I have gotten those filled and sent off to the grant coordinator. I'm waiting for her to finish that process up on her end. And then it should be really simple from there. We really just need to make the acquisition and then apply for the reimbursement for them. So it's not a super complicated grant, which is nice. For future grants, I think we have to wait till this one is wrapped up to go for another one. And we were still kind of brainstorming on what we would do. It's so hard to say because the streetlight element of it, I think I feel like I remember someone saying that was almost already in the works to be completed. Like there's
Yeah, I believe Maren, I think maybe knew more about that, but it did seem to think that, yeah, there wasn't a lot left to be done there potentially that would be worth, it would be grant worthy, I guess.
Right.
I think we've even seen, I've certainly noticed some upgrades to city lighting in various places that was not there before, my own neighborhood included. So definitely seems like it's still an ongoing process already. And I'm guessing that's a DPW thing. So yeah. And yeah, I don't know if we had anything else on the table. I mean, right, you said we have to complete this. We'll have to have, close out the previous grant, and what, October would probably be when we go after the next one. So we have a little time to think between that. I mean, that's even if this one gets closed out by then, which I don't know. What do you think the likelihood of that is?
I kind of feel like we could potentially do it, but we just need to, but yeah, they do the 2 blocks. And so there's the spring and the fall. So I will try to push for being available to go again in the fall, but I guess, yeah, it kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah,
There's been delays for vehicles currently with supply chain weirdness.
Right.
So I don't know if that could be
chips
a
and
factor.
something else, right? That's a good point.
So are you saying, Kathy, that you can't apply? Is that true? You can't apply for the next block until you've expended the money or finished the reimbursement process for an earlier grant?
Yeah, it needs to be closed out.
Was that,
Um,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Then we're kind of at somebody else's mercy then, the industry mercy then, huh?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll keep, Cassie will continue to provide us updates there. In the meantime, we can brainstorm some ideas. Connie, did you have something?
I just was curious whether, the tree warden is organizing a survey of all the trees in East Hampton, and I'm wondering whether the category of trees would fall under a grant, like to have, there's a company that does an evaluation of how much methane is in the soil to determine where it would be appropriate to plant new trees. Because if you plant them where the methane has leaked into the trees, all die. And often if there's an area where there are a lot of dying trees, it's because of the leaks that have gone into the soil. And I'm just curious whether that would fall under this, a grant proposal idea, whether that, I don't know.
Well, it's funny, the green community grants specifically typically are geared towards things that will like measurably reduce like fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. I think that it could be, I could wait when we get the next block, description of the grants, it could change. I don't know that it will change to include something like that, but I can look through and see if there's anything that fits.
Okay.
Or even approaches fitting that, and maybe there could be something with the tree warden, but they
Like
do
planting trees, to increase the tree canopy for the environment. I'm just asking because I know that
it's a good question, and I get that that's a piece of the puzzle, but typically it'll be things like replacing old infrastructure, replacing things that don't, or like putting in new like solar panels or getting these electric vehicles, things like that.
okay.
But I don't know, Jamie, you might have something to add to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just kind of saying reiterating what you're just saying, in that because we're limited to how many grants we can apply in any given cycle to one, without closing out the previous one.
Okay.
So there's also, regardless of whether or not it's an allowable grant request, I think there's a, we want to try to focus on things that we can things that are going to be very expensive if we don't get that we don't have other funding sources for, or things that we can quickly do and wrap up. So like the cars, where we ran into this a few years ago, we had a project that was sort of, it had a design element to it, and the design element took, I think, about a year longer than we anticipated. And so then we were shut out from other grant opportunities. So I think these are all great ideas, but we do to focus on the things that we can.
I don't think this would be for enough money either. I didn't know you could only do one, because I don't think it would ever be enough money to make sense to have it be the grant. Yeah.
It's like, I mean,
Thank you.
it's somewhat competitive, right? I mean, you're competing against other municipalities as well. So you want to have something that's going to, again, stand out. It's going to have that sort of immediate return and the ability to say, hey, there's some measurables here that we can turn around and show you. But we do have a chance to, think of some new things, like, things that for the city. The next thing on the agenda was sort of a new initiatives piece. The aggregation's a big one, and we've got on a good track. But there's certainly other things to follow that up with that may be shorter term, or maybe different. I put school bus electrification on there just because that popped to mind, because the school budget sort of battles that are going on right now. There was some debate around, there's going to be increased busing costs with the new school because more kids are further away and like outside the radius where they can be bused.
I thought we don't own our buses though. Don't we have a contract with some company?
Well, that's something I'd like somebody to find out a little bit more for me. Or for the committee, not just for me. I thought so too, but then like we do, there are buses around that say East Hampton Public Schools on them. So, it may be that we own some and contract for some others, and maybe we're going to need more. Previously, I found a company that's, sort of a startup that's working with the town of Newton, among other places, to do where they own the buses and basically lease them to cities for, reasonable prices. So the city doesn't actually have to have the upfront like purchasing costs, but can reap the benefits of using like electric vehicles for their buses, reduce the fossil fuels and stuff that way. So, I had reached out to that company a while back and never got a response. We're certainly a small town compared to like Newton and some other places. We don't have a ton of buses, but, we're going to have this increased load for our buses with the new school. So, and then, and it's an increased cost for the city. And that is an opportunity cost for things like teachers or support services and things like that, when we have to pay so much for busing, that's money that can't be spent elsewhere. So regardless of whether we own them or whether we do it through a lease program or something else, like it'd be, that's one thing that was kind of interesting for me, especially because I have school age kids. Maybe that's an area that we could look at, and maybe even something that could be covered by a grant, for a partial, if we did a lease, or even if we were buying some buses or something like that, so that we could get that, have that reduction and maybe reduce some costs at the same time.
Well, Marin probably knows what the story is with the buses, I would think.
He knows some stuff. Yeah, I mean, being on the school committee and previously, and then the school building committee knows some. And I know some other folks on the school committee that we can certainly try to find out some more information about that. But if anyone, is able to get sort of a definitive answer, like, do we own?
I'm willing to track that down, Jamie and Connie. I'll look into the existing arrangements and costs and responsibility, how responsibilities are shared, and if we have any of our own fleet and all that.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll check with Marin too then.
Okay. Yeah, please do. And then, I think I shared the link in an email, I think, to that company that's doing the startup sort of EV, fleet.
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, John, while you're doing that, if you want to find that information out, because part of it, the upfront questioning is like, how many buses do you are in your fleet or whatever.
Right.
They want to know that.
Right.
So once we know that information, we can actually reach out to them and say, okay, hey, here's what's actually the case. Do you think you could work with us?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then start the process from there. And I know we're down a couple of committee members right now, but if there are other ideas right now, or people want to do some brainstorming for new initiatives, we can certainly discuss those now or in a future meeting.
Oh, I don't want to derail, but I do want to add something about the annual report for green communities. If you have
Oh,
time.
sure. Yeah, that's absolutely.
Okay, sorry. The only other thing about it was that I got feedback from DOER about it. They finished their review. They had 3 small corrections that need to be made. So I'm working on those right now. And that kind of ties into social media posts. Scott had reached out to me about potentially like sharing our annual report. And I realized I kind of had assumed that like I hadn't gotten any feedback yet. So it's like, oh, maybe there was no corrections. This is great. But since I just got them, I was like, I guess we should wait until it's really, really final before we put those up there. But I gotta I have to email Scott about that. But
Okay. No,
sorry.
good. No, that's good. That's good to close the loop on that a little bit. And yeah, certainly I think that's a good thing for us to put out.
For new initiatives, I don't know if another thing would be I sent you a brief kind of explanation of why I was late, Jamie, about this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. There was, I don't know if any of you remember, there was this kind of disaster in Lawrence with natural gas, with the Columbia Gas Company, where a lot of them like exploded.
Yeah.
There was a lawsuit obviously that followed after that. And part of the settlement was some money that came to specifically Northampton and East Hampton to kind of compensate for this, something called the Northampton moratorium. And so in theory, that money was supposed to help kind of switch people away from Columbia Gas. So to kind of compensate old Columbia Gas employees or customers. And so DOER reached out to me because they weren't really sure who to reach out to. So I need to, there might be someone that won't go through me in the future. I don't know, but they're trying to figure out like, what can we do with this money? It's not a huge amount. It's only $500,000 that is in theory split between the two communities. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's split between the two communities. And the way that they looked at it, considering just like, how many Columbia Gas customers were there in Northampton versus East Hampton, kind of results in the money being split 70-30, with 70% going to Northampton and 30% going to East Hampton. So that kind of totals only to about $120,000 going to East Hampton. And that's not settled. That's not like a set in stone number. It's just kind of what their first guess was like, oh, maybe we'd split it this way. A lot, like the whole thing is totally up in the air and kind of confusing. Like DOER and Northampton and East Hampton all kind of need to come together to figure out what we would do with this money. And the focus on it would be to get people or help support people set up heat pumps in their home. So it was a residential initiative.
Maybe, I would love to see something focused on multifamilies and renters, because I think landlords are hesitant to spend the kind of money that it costs to help their renters switch off of gas for obvious reasons. It's very expensive. So, that would be a wonderful, that might be a grant as well.
And so, yeah, and it's an interesting thing because it was one of the things we talked about. It's hard to figure out what's the best way to create a program that would kind of support this, because through Mass Saves, the lower income communities and the environmental justice communities are very well supported for this switch to heat pump usage. So, or at least that's
I'm not sure that is actually completely true. I don't think that there is a subsidy in the same way. You can switch from oil to natural gas and get a subsidy, but I don't know that there's a subsidy for heat pumps. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think there is.
You're not eligible. I'm looking into it, and I'm not eligible as a gas customer to get the subsidy on ground source heat pumps or air source heat pumps.
Oh, but there is a subsidy. What, you have to have oil to get it?
Oil or wood or electricity, oil, wood, or electricity. You're eligible. So.
Say that again. Oil.
Your primary source of heat is oil, wood, or electric heat, then you are eligible. That's my understanding, Matt, for the Mass Save subsidy on, or is that Mass Save? I guess it's Mass Save, yeah.
Well, so that's really helpful from both of you. I think that I know that one of the big parts of the conversation too is like, it wasn't clear how all the initiatives are coming together. And so that's another thing we need to like kind of sort out so that we can figure out what's the best way to develop a program that would ideally help just supplement the holes that exist amongst these initiatives potentially somehow. I mean, if they, the reality of the situation is if we were talking about just trying to fund straight up people putting in a new heat pump, that's about $5,000 per household. And that would really only equate to helping about 26 homes. So, and then there was reasoning behind why it should be focused on actual homeowners as opposed to renters, just because it would be a whole home system, supporting a whole home system, as opposed to, if you're a renter, that's a little bit harder to make it, who would pay for the whole renting unit, you know, it's getting a little complicated.
Complicated. But on the other hand, there are a lot of renters. You know, if we don't start thinking about how we're going to get them off of fossil fuels,
Hmm.
you know, it is a big part of the population in any community.
Right. Yeah, another thing is, that I thought around that is, helping renters signed up for things like community solar programs and things like that as well, because that's another thing that, I read anybody with an electric bill can do. I mean, pre-aggregation, and community solar is not you're not changing your supplier by doing that. You're really just buying, you're just getting the solar credits essentially, more or less. So, yeah.
Or for that matter, putting solar panels on multifamily.
Right.
Well, the details of the money that was got from the settlement, this legal settlement from the Columbia Gas, it kind of stipulates that it has to go towards heat pump. For
Okay.
whatever reason. I know. I think it's because it's, these people who were using Columbia Gas now are
Mhm.
potentially not anymore. And so
Well, it's to force people to get on to use electricity, that obviously to heat their homes. That's the point of it, I guess.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right, because of the moratorium, number one. Number two, because, I think from a environmental standpoint, electrification is the way, we want to trend to get away from natural gas, even as a bridge
Right.
fuel kind of thing. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think there's that could be, there's could be some interesting ways we could do that. And again, maybe, with that money, is that something like could green communities supplement that with a grant, and then we get more money and we can run, we can do sort of a larger program around that potentially. I don't know if that's eligible for such a thing, but
It's a good
And
question.
another aspect of this that I wonder about is because we have a moratorium, which I'm actually in favor of. I mean, it's sort of, but the problem is that I think a lot of developers just put in propane. They don't put in heat pumps, and if there would be some way to write a grant to, I don't know what it would be, but to get developers or people who are doing major remodeling to choose heat pumps instead of propane. I mean, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that's-
that grant would be exactly, but
Well, it's an interesting point. And one of the things that was floated around in this discussion was like, well, maybe we should reach out to contractors to see what are their barriers to, I mean, again, it's not a huge amount, but could we do something that maybe if the grant focused not on fully funding people to get the physical heat pump, instead focused on technical assistance in some way. Then it's
that's a really good idea, because I know I have met people who told me that they got information from an installer about a heat pump that was really wacky information. And so they either only use it for air conditioning, or they chose not to install a heat pump because, and I think a lot of the people who are doing the installations don't have the right information. So that's would be another sort of interesting thing to think about. Yeah.
And just kind of thinking,
Talking to
ways to try to make the money go farther if it's
Yeah.
not as expensive per person or whatever.
Right.
But basically where it left off was the gentleman in Northampton, he was going to work on trying to pull together, so he had been in more talks with DOER about trying to figure this out. And he was going to try to create just some kind of quick draft proposal, very early stages. And once we get that, I'll bring it to you guys, and then we can start, just because it was very big and amorphous. And if we can zoom it in and then start giving feedback, hopefully that'll be
That
more
sounds
productive.
great. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll reach out at the next meeting. I'll be able to bring something, hopefully.
okay. Yeah, that's exciting. $150,000 is still something. That's
Ain't nothing.
exactly. I mean, right? We got 15,000 for a couple electric vehicles. 150,000 can certainly do some good. So good. And yeah, so if there are other ideas kicking around now or in the near future, everyone can take this and think a little bit about it. We've got a couple possibilities swirling here, to see what might come up that we want to push or run with a little bit more. All right, so good. So just a couple more things here to wrap up the agenda. the Honeywell RFP in here and just made a note that the mayor had reached out, and the quick update that I got was that they were in a reevaluation process with that whole proposal right now with a company called Beacon Solutions, who I think is a energy consulting firm. Just looking at what Honeywell had put together, kind of reevaluating that in light of some other things that are changing in terms of solar programs and other potential programs, I think with Eversource and elsewhere. So as the mayor sort of getting new information around that, sort of seeing, okay, what still makes sense or what might we want to change. So it seems like, again, that what was in the RFP was never a final document. It was always, it was being used to get the money in the bond to be able to spend if and when, once everything's finalized. But the reevaluation is happening. I don't have any information beyond that. It's possible at some point we might get a chance to learn more and have some input into that. I'll certainly keep everybody updated if there is any more on that. But for now, kind of in a holding pattern.
John,
Yeah, John.
is part of that one of the considerations, the American Rescue Plan money, because that really targets wastewater treatment plants. And from what I understand, some of the things that would likely be targeted by Honeywell, are problems that our plant has and that could be funded under the American Rescue Plan money. And I don't know if there's then duplication or just confusion or something because of what could be funded from federal money through the state versus what would come under the Honeywell guarantees.
Right. Yeah, good question. And she did actually specifically, I pulled up her message here. She did mention, promising solar programs and grants in the recently passed federal legislation. So that is something that is part of the consideration here, is that there may be additional money available, or there may be additional programs that we want projects to fit into. So I think that is something that they're looking at. And of course, we got to wait and see, I guess, what's going to work its way down to the municipal level, or that we could take advantage of. But yep, that is, I don't know. I know that was a question you had from the last meeting as well, John. So I think, we're still waiting to see exactly what shape a lot of that stuff is going to take: wastewater treatment, solar, other pieces that may be part of that.
Yep. Okay.
So quick thing on here, we usually talk a little bit about, some social media posts. Scott kind of leads that. I don't think he's been on the call today, but Cassie did mention it in terms of the DOER, or sort of the annual report for green communities. As we get into this aggregation process a little bit further in front of the council and get that, we'll want to, try to start finding some ways to communicate things. I think, maybe even getting some stuff up on the city website. I noticed that like EDIC had something that they got posted on the city website recently. So it may be, the type of thing where we could get, a blurb or a piece, a PDF that they would put up and link for us around aggregation or something like that. But, I'm certainly open to ideas too. It seems like the social media conversation so often sort of begins and ends like Facebook and like, what else can we do? And it's really hard. I've talked to other people on other committees, and they're sort of like, yeah, it's really hard to get, information out there to people in a meaningful way and then communicate with that. So it's just kind of an open-ended question of like how we, when we're doing stuff. And I think we've got a more motivated and committee with some ideas and wants to get some things done. So, the more support, the more eyeballs we can get on things, the better for stuff like that. So, all ideas are on the table as far as that goes, if and when there are ways that we can do that. Anyone have anything to add on anything we've gone through so far, or anything new or business they want to bring up at this point?
No.
All right. Well, we're going to stick with the fourth Monday of the month for our upcoming meetings. So March 28th will be the next one. In the interim, we all have a few different things we're going to do. I am going to get an update or do a public speaker committee update to the city council, probably, about mid-March, as I said, to move the aggregation thing forward from that side. We'll work on getting that language updated with the counselors, with Counselor Zaret, for the resolution itself, based on Patrick's feedback and Connie and some of the other things that we had here. And then, yeah, we'll brainstorm a little bit around some of the green community, some additional grants, and the heat pump DOER information that Cassie brought to us. And Jamie Webb will keep us updated on solar ordinances. And John, if you find anything on the docket there that goes along with that, we'll look
And the
forward
buses.
to that update, and the buses as well. Exactly. Yes, thank you.
I'm quite interested in the possibility of the things Cassie and others have raised about the uses of that Eversource money, or is it Columbia Gas? Same, right? Money. I do like the idea of using it, backing up here a little bit, but as using it to develop a strategy and maybe demonstrate some techniques for getting at the rental sector, and getting two landlords to take advantage of grants for solar and subsidies for solar. But I would I'd like to hear from Cassie what goes on in the next month. Maybe I'll get a hold of you later if you're having conversations with this guy in Northampton. But that, to me, that's a good area for new initiatives. And I think the money would just disappear too quickly for individual residential grants, as she demonstrated with the math. But sorry, went to digression.
No, that's okay.
I'll definitely keep you all posted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Well, then, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Connie, you feel free to second this one.
I'm under the impression I can't do that. I haven't even been sworn in, but I
Oh,
certainly.
you haven't been sworn in? Okay. Well, I was given
Yeah.
according to.
I thought I didn't really have to do that, but I called her this afternoon. She said, "Oh yeah, you actually do have to get sworn in." So I said,
okay.
I'll go do that tomorrow.
According to the city clerk, you're on the whatever she sent me.
Well, it's because I have to take some test about the open meeting law. Apparently, that's the.
Oh yeah, I got a message about that. We're all going to have to do that. I will provide more information that to the committee members. But
I did it. It takes quite a bit of time.
yeah.
Well, I used to work in a public school, so it never ends, that stuff. They're always coming up with new stupid things for people to have to do. At least now it's online. It used to be worse.
Right. Yeah, Lindsay from the mayor's office did send me something. I read it. I haven't fully digested what it all means. So
I will add to it, just because I was actually asking her about it today, and it's a little time sensitive in that there's two potential opportunities for taking this. You have to register for the training.
oh, that's right.
At the end, one is on March 8th at 6 p.m.
Wow.
And the
Right.
the other option is March 22nd at 3 p.m. or something. But
That's correct. Yeah, thank you. Then both of those are before our next meeting. So actually, thank you, Cassie, for that. Yeah, March 8th at 6 or March 22nd at 3 p.m. There's links to register. I will send this around in the next day or so to the members of the committee to make sure that everybody's got it and that you can register if you want. I will
it
register.
used to be that you could just take this online course at your own leisure, but I think it's a little more structured now. So
Are you
Right.
talking about the conflict of interest, or is this open meeting laws, or which?
open meeting law.
Open
Okay,
meeting laws.
The one I did was the online for conflict of interest. So this is something.
Yeah, this is something from an executive order of 2020, and I think it has to do with a lot of things moving to COVID,
Right.
online meetings as opposed to in person. So that's what it is. So yeah, I will forward this to the committee. Thank you, Cassie, for reminding me that was time sensitive and not something I could just sit on for another month
Or two.
or two. So yeah, we will make sure that everybody gets that done, hopefully, and be in compliance. Definitely a lot of things around open meeting laws that I still don't even fully understand in terms of what. So it'll be useful for me for sure.
Yeah.
All right, but other than that, with that, I will say we're ready to adjourn. I appreciate everybody's time. James.
I just would like to say before we go that although I was complaining bitterly, I'm very happy to be on this committee, whatever my status. And
we're happy to have you, Connie, and you're going to be, I guarantee you that at any meeting you show up to, you're going to have voting power, almost assuredly. So don't fret about that. And
Okay.
your contributions are absolutely welcome, and they'll love to have you. I like that we have
Thank
some
you.
members and we have some new energy
Great.
at this, and I think it's going to be very good for the committee. So appreciate
Okay,
you all
good.
being here.
Thank you for saying
time
that.
today.
Right.
Cassie
Take
and Jim,
care.
thank you as always for your support and helping us out, keeping us up to speed on things. So with that, right out, everybody have a good evening, and we'll see you
Good night.
March
Bye-bye.
28th.
Bye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.